Grand Rise, Grand Afternoon, whatever it is you want to call it. Wanted to come in and tap in on something. You know, Divine don't need no help from nobody. No religion, no broken in half ciphers, no false deifying forms to try to explain what's actually taking place in the world. But these forces are more popular, if you want to use that word for understanding, when in fact they don't even hold real presence. The presence that they hold is in their own right and representing that personal cause, right? So then you have all these different groups and people who follow different religious aspects and all this other shit, whatever that means for you and you understanding that. When in fact the connection directly with the all creator has always been the mission, to connect directly. Back in the day, I used to study 5% understanding, and then I always understood that there was a contradiction within man. So if there's a contradiction within man's existence, there's going to be a contradiction within the way man think and speak and connect to certain things, which in that aspect, the pose and power of explaining one's retrospect as far as spirituality would be highly accepted on the physical plane of understanding. Which if I can harness your fiat energy here, then the belief of what you think you understand will propagate the spiritual understanding needed to push that understanding forward. See, lack thereof of no knowledge, right? If you have no knowledge, period, you gain knowledge and then that brings forth wisdom. But that shouldn't come from a man or a form of man. And but we know in these things, it is imperative to tap into the divine. That's why certain aspects of studying spirituality was banned or named demonic in that aspect, because it kind of alleviated the understanding from a man or a type of man. See, the reason why I say man is a contradiction within itself, because the woman that exists today is a lower level of herself, the lowest level of herself. This is why women make decisions that have nothing to do based on the creation that they are. When in fact, that same mishap into the womb man's decision making of this time, the womb man is what brings forth life to man. So then man, being the unformed idealism of woman, not being able to have bosoms, not being able to have the structure of the hips to carry life, even if it's manipulated probabilities, it's still not the natural way of things. So moreover than knowing that you are a default property of what women are, meaning that you are incomplete, you are a contradiction, you are a man, you're not woman. So most of the characteristics that men deal with come from a contradictory fact of a woman. So then in reverse polarity, a woman, being in her highest form of contradictory, can blame you as a man for every form of her own personal mishaps. This is why it's imperative to connect directly to the source. The woman, before she was diluted into this form in this existence, knew that dilution was taking place. It is clear as day how you look up and see the condensation of light that comes down. That is a dilution as it crossed through different vibrations just to get to the flat surface or the the physical surface of this plane of existence. It has to dilute itself just to be here. So in the same retrospect, everything that came from the universe was dwindled down just to be on this circumference of plane of existence. So dilution takes place whether you knew it or not. So as the dilution is taking place, there were higher understanding of beings that knew this was taking place and tried to preserve the universal energy that was existing at the time, thus the creation of man. It wasn't the fact that the creation of man was going to be deemable to be in that aspect of glorified pretense, but knowing that I put something in a jar, I expect it to be there. A jar, meaning an open door. Thus, men use that understanding to train all types of universal principles. No, we carry a universe because it was stored inside of us to give it back to the original woman through vibration and intention. So then when you give it back to the woman through vibration and intention, once was dwindled down, can grow back into its right of universal principle. I don't lean on my own understanding through no shape or form. I meditate and I access the divine. And this is the forgotten properties that we have as a culture of people, not remembering that we did not study under no book or written pretense from someone else's understanding. We access through meditation and higher pretenses to connect to the divine and get all of the information that we were dealing with to move forward on this plane of existence. So these parts of understanding are liberating when you are in the right mentality of knowing where you're placed and how to stay in your personal lane. But lack thereof of connection to the divine, we seem to outsource outside of ourselves, which leads you to look in other directions of contradictory aspects, meaning anything that is familiar or similar to your understanding, you will gravitate to that to get understanding from. That doesn't make it what it is. It just makes double the contradiction. Thus, we propagate a whole understanding of false understanding of universal principle that people live by. Divine creates in the highest form and the lowest form. And there is unconditional love for all of its pretense. Because through the highest level of divine understanding, look at the ladybug just landed on my face. Check that out. Through the highest form of through the highest form of creation that takes place, there is still this understanding for hoping that those creations would grow in its right of the highest form of divine. Unconditional love is the only thing that divine represents out of the creation of thus it creates. So there is room for everything to exist because there is room for growth. Even in the positive direction, it has to grow in its highest form of unconditional love. And the negative creations have to grow towards their highest form of divine energy, which will liberate them from their own personal understanding of what this retrospect may be as far as what we call life. Liberating from the ego and fear and your own personal wants and needs. Give yourself to the divine. Keep yourself daily for the divine and do it tomorrow as you do it today. Hey, it came back. You are light. You will be light when you return to the divine. So I leave you. Amatsu enpa entra sauk su emit ra enpa entra awu ra maketi pa heru ra nukpanuku nukpanuku nuka pa nuka ku nuka pa nuka ku. Vibrations in their self bring the harmony. Lose the fear. Gain the love. Respect. You already know the vibes. NAGA.